Welcome back to Touring the AFC South. Of course, we're in the month of April, but we're still talking about Women's History Month in the month of April because you can talk about women's history in any month of the year. And my next guest, she is a former Olympian. She is a broadcast veteran, Miss Leslie Maxie. How you doing?
Doing great. How are you doing, Mike?
I am doing great. It is an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. We're going to get into your career, but up first, like I did with every Women's History Month show, I have a Women's History Month fact. And of course, this episode, we're going to go with Alice Coachman. Now, Alice was born November 9th, 1923, in Albany, Georgia. She was denied access to athletic training and organized sports because of the color of her skin. Of course, 1923, Albany, Georgia, need not say anymore. But she, of course, improvised running barefoot along the dirt roads near her home and using homemade equipment to practice her jumping. Um, Finally, in 1938, she joined the track team in Madison High School to develop her skills as an athlete. She would eventually draw the attention of Tuskegee Institute of Alabama, eventually joined the Tuskegee Prep School at 16 after being offered a scholarship. She would graduate with a degree in dressmaking in 1946, then went on to Albany State for a BS in home economics in 1949. Uh, from there, of course, she would become a teacher and a track and field coach. She did not get to compete in the 1940 and 1946 Olympics, 40 and 40, well, the two consecutive Olympics, basically because of World War II. 1948, though, she finally got to compete. She would compete in the high jump and win a gold medal. Actually, in 1948, she became the first Black woman to win a gold medal in the Olympics. So that's my Women's History Month fact for, I guess, this episode. Did you know that one?
I did. I did. Did you
Okay.
know I used to be a high jumper?
I was aware.
Did you know that I tore my patella tendon high jumping? You didn't know that.
Yeah,
I
so
didn't know
much
it either
family.
until I retired and then I ruptured it.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yikes. Yikes, yikes, yikes. I'm
Yikes.
reaching at my knee right now. You can't see it, but I'm reaching at my knee like, yow, that hurts. That hurts.
Half
That
your
hurts.
audience is reaching at their knees because they know the pain of knees. There's just nothing that can describe it. But when you felt it, you never forget it.
Right. Well, I didn't necessarily. I was blessed to not, seriously injure a knee, but I did hyperextend one when I was a kid. But nah, that was that that.
He hyperextended it, please.
Yeah, I know. I know. I was like, kind of a soft thing compared to tearing something. I know. I know. But we want to get into your history, your life. You grew up in the Bay Area, correct?
I did. Born in San
Now, how was it?
Francisco.
How was it growing up out in the Bay Area? Because I got family, I got cousins that live out in the Bay Area. So I
Mhm.
want to know, how was it like? How was it growing up out there?
Well, you know what? Where do your cousins live?
They live in Oakland.
Oh, okay. EO.
Hmm.
They live in
Yeah.
Oaktown. Okay, so theirs was a little bit different than mine. I was born in San Francisco, lived in Daly City for the first maybe 14 years of my life, and then moved to San Mateo, but I went to Mills High School. And so when you land at SFO, you're actually not landing in San Francisco, obviously. You're landing in San Bruno, Millbrae. And when you look up at those hills, that's where I went to high school. It was wonderful. I mean, I say that I was as good as I was, as young as I was, because the hill that I walked home from in Daly City, from elementary school to my house, was like this. Okay. Now, anybody that's ever run knows that if you want to make progress, you have to do hill charges. And so I essentially did that hill. It was about a half mile. every single day, sometimes twice a day. And that was the secret to my early success, for sure, for sure.
Okay. So how did you kind of get introduced to track?
Yeah,
Growing.
absolutely. Well, I started running at 6 years old. My I have older cousins. My brothers are older than me in my immediate family. I'm the baby. And I couldn't stay home alone, obviously. My brothers are 4 and 3 years older than me. And we all, so I have 21 first cousins that live in the Bay Area. My mom, my Aunt May, my Aunt Pauline, and my Aunt Peggy. And we would travel like packs. And so when one did one thing, we all did it. And my cousin, Brooke Gaston, was one of the first Title IX athletes at Cal Berkeley. And my cousin, Marion Franklin, Boughton now, she was an alternate on the 1980 Olympic team and had her first junior team experience touring all over Europe when I was about 10 years old. And that was a seminal moment in my life because her in that uniform was how I decided I was going to go to the Olympics.
Okay. All right. So I know as kids, people will say they want to be this, that, and the other. But what did you really want to be at first growing up in the Bay Area?
You know what, Mike? Pretty close to who I am and what I am right now. I started running, like I said, when I was 6. I started in television when I was 9. About the same time I started running, I started modeling. And when I was 9 years old, I saw a show called Kids Watch. And I was like, kid reporters? You never tell me twice. My mother never called me nosy. She called me newsy because I was always in the tea. So I started that show and actually did the last interview with Jesse Owens before he passed away when I was like 13 or 14 years old. Um, I won the Jesse Owens track and field championships. That was sponsored by Arco at the time, and I was high jumping. So I love that you talked about Madam Coachman because she's one of my idols. But yeah, so I was high jumping at the time, and I talked the show into sending a crew out, dispatching a crew from the NBC affiliate in Los Angeles, and they said, "Well, have you scheduled an interview with Mr. Owens?" And I said no. I said, but I'm going to win the high jump, and when I win, you get to go to dinner with Jesse Owens. Everybody that won got to sit at his table. I said, so when he's giving me my medal, I'm going to ask him if he'll let me interview him. And they were like, I don't know why they believed a kid, but they believed me. They sent a crew, and he put the medal around my neck and shook my hand, and I held his hand. And I said, Mr. Owens, may I interview you for my television show? And he was like, well, I mean, there's a PR woman here and you can talk to her about setting something up. And I was like, no, I have a crew here right now. He said, you have a crew here at the track meet? I said, yep. I pointed over my shoulder and the crew kind of waved. And he said, kid, that takes moxie. I said, well, my name is Maxie.
There
And
you
we sat
go.
on the high jump pits and did the interview right there.
Wow, you called your shot and you made it happen. Wow.
Called that shot.
There you go. There you go. Now, you would take track on to USC. So going from the Bay Area to Southern California, nice little interesting move there. I have seen USC, by the way. I went to Los Angeles a couple years ago. Now that was fun. I was like, I didn't know the
I
location
know it was.
specifically of USC, but I saw it. I was like, oh, okay. I see why they got all this and this and this and this. Makes sense.
It wasn't always like that, Mike. Okay? It wasn't always like that. When I went to USC, was in the times. Do you watch that show, Snowfall?
I watch it. I watched a little bit of it. I haven't watched all
Okay.
of it.
That was USC in the 80s. We were
Ah,
very, very close to the Bloods and the Crips. And it was never dull. Never dull. But I went to USC. Fred LaPlante was my coach, and he was my coach for the first 2 years. When I took the year off to train for the Olympics at home with my coach Parker, he ended up going home to Eastern Michigan. His parents were older and really needed some full time care, and he was an only child. So he went to take care of them. So he was my coach for the first couple of years, and then there was another man that was my coach when I came back. But Fred LaPlante was the one who recruited me, and he was very, very good to me. Really good person, and a great coach. Or actually,
How can
great person, good coach.
There we go. There we go. Now, how can you say your USC days kind of prepared you for the Olympics, and then coming back from the Olympics? How was that? How did those kind of situations or kind of things kind of compare to each other?
Yeah. Well, I missed making the Olympic team in '84, Mike, by 2/100ths of a second. I was a
Hmm.
junior in high school, and the '84 games was the first time that women would get to contest the 400-meter hurdles at the Olympic Games. I was a I was a national caliber 100 hurdle and 400 runner, but my legs were too long for me to be really, really great at the 100 hurdles. I was fast, but not quick. And in the 400 meters, like I said, fast and not quick. And the difference is when you're fast, you can get up to top speed, but it takes a little longer than 100 yards. When you're quick, you can like off of a dime, like that Michael Johnson kind of quickness. And that wasn't me. And so, my Parker, Mr. Parker, my coach, came to us in '84 and about maybe February or so. And he was like, look, this is the first time that the 400-meter hurdles are going to be contested for women. Leslie is a good 100-meter hurdler and a good 400-meter runner, but she'll never be great in either one of those events. And I was like, wah, wah. But he said,
Wow.
but I think if we combine the events, there's a really good chance that we could have lightning in a bottle. And so from February to June and July, I went from an unranked, unknown, snot nosed junior in high school to second in the world and a world record that would stand for 32 years. And like I said, I missed making the Olympic team by 2/100ths of a second, but it was mostly because of lack of experience towards the end of the race. I didn't know how to alternate. So when you see Sydney McLaughlin doing a 100 hurdle race on her opposite lead leg or a 60 hurdle race on her opposite lead leg, it's so she can become proficient, so she can be just as good on the leg that she leans towards naturally as she is on the other one. And there just wasn't enough time to teach me that in that short period of time. So in '88, when I had the opportunity to make another run for it, it only made sense that I would come home to Mr. Parker, the one who knew me best. Mr. Parker had been coaching me since I was 6 years old. And, frankly, he got as close to the Olympic Games with me. And I really wanted to be able to complete that experience under his tutelage. Mr. Parker had at least one athlete on every Olympic team from 1956 all the way to 1988. And I was his last Olympian. So I really wanted that honor.
Wow. Wow. So, can you just explain the Olympics and the feeling of the Olympics just to someone that has never either even been or participated in it?
Yeah. I get asked that question a lot. And what I basically say is it is anything that you can imagine times 100, times 100, times 100. It's an incredible feeling because you have this one moment in time when everyone around the world and their eyes are all pointed towards wherever the Olympic Games are being held that year. And, their eyes are pointed there, and most of us, our breath is held for that person that we're rooting for. We can know them or not know them. And I don't care if you consider yourself patriotic or not. When you put on the red, white, and blue, something happens. Something happens. There is not a team that's harder to make than the U.S. track and field team. You don't get grandfathered in. You can't have a great reputation and get your slot on the team. You can't be somebody that everybody loves and get your slot on the team. You have to earn your way on. Now, when it comes to relays, that can get a little political, but actually getting your spot, it is mano y mano. You and the lane.
All right. Well, I definitely enjoyed hearing of your track and your growing up. But of course, you began to make a transition. We're going to talk about that transition after we take a transition to a commercial break. We'll be right back on Touring the AFC South with your host, Mike Pat. Whether it's local or long distance, Milligan Logistics has you covered. Milligan Logistics was established in 2020 with over a combined 15 years of experience in trucking, hauling, and logistics, along with over 50 years collectively of project management experience. Again, whether it's near or far, Milligan Logistics has you covered with quality service, efficiency while taking pleasure in exceeding clients' expectations. Need goods moved short or long distance? Milligan Logistics has you covered. Just reach out to them at 615-354-2618. That's 615-354-2618. Or you can send them an email at milliganlogistics@gmail.com. And again, that's milliganlogistics@gmail.com. Right, and we're back. Of course, the transition from track to doing more kind of broadcasting and doing more of those things in front of the camera, actually speaking to the camera, that started early, as you mentioned. But when did that transition start, from the track to, holding the mic in front of the camera?
Well, it didn't start immediately. When I retired from track and field, I went to work for Maryland Special Olympics. I ran the western portion of the state. And I went from there I was recruited into the Baltimore Orioles into the marketing department by Calvin Hill, the Browns and Cowboys Hall of Fame running back. Grant Hill's father recruited me into the Orioles. I had gone to the Orioles to recruit some players for a function I was going to have at the at Special Olympics, and he was like, "Well, we have our charities already defined, but do you want a job?" I was like, "Sure." So I worked there in marketing and PR, and then came back to California, worked at a boutique marketing firm here, got married, had my babies, and my ex-husband was a baseball player. And so we went to Huntsville, Alabama, because he got a post as the A's AA manager. And I couldn't work at the same boutique firm. They didn't, have affiliates. So I said, I wonder if I could do an internship and if I would love it as much as I did when I was a kid. I was 31. My kids were 2 and 4 years old. Pam Oliver had just started for Fox sideline reporting. And to see her doing what, I had always envisioned myself doing, representation matters, Mike. It really, really matters. And so I arranged an internship and, didn't get paid for it, but you had to shoot, write, edit, report. And that's what I did for the 6 months that we were there. I came back to California and actually went back to the station that I had worked at when I was a kid, the NBC affiliate, KRON, and they had a high school show. And I, went and met with the producer, and he was like, "Well, I wish I had met with you a month sooner. I don't have a budget." I said, "I didn't ask you to pay me." It was at a time, hey, my husband was working. I didn't necessarily need to, but what I needed was reps. So they hired me, and I, worked on that show for a season and got picked up by the largest high school show in America. And was there for about a year, and then I got picked up by Fox Sports Region in San Francisco and got the eye of Fox Sports in LA. I landed an interview with Alex Rodriguez right before he signed the biggest contract in Major League Baseball history at that time, and was able to kind of make my way from there, and came out to left California, coming to the East Coast in 2003 to work for ESPN's Cold Pizza.
Oh yes, cold pizza. Wow, I remember that show. I was actually a let's see, 2003. I was a junior in college in
Oh,
2003.
so you really
So
were eating cold pizza.
yes, definitely. So I just remember that show. You had Woody Page on one side, you had Skip Bayless on another, and I mean, you had what Jay Crawford was one of the hosts. I definitely remember that show. I've got to ask, um, with that show, I know there was always, the interesting dynamic. You have Woody, and they're always going at each other. You know, what was it like just witnessing some of that?
Well, they call it a soap opera for a reason. Yeah, I mean, cold pizza, just like really any television show, you have the dynamics on the screen, but behind the show, it's like everybody's cool. Everybody's cool. So it was really fun. It was very exciting. There was always activity. I had the opportunity to sit down in interviews with Denzel Washington and Brad Pitt, Angelina Jolie, Venus and Serena. So pretty exciting stuff. And at the end of the day, they're just people. They put their pants on one leg at a time, and just having the opportunity to talk with them, especially when you're talking to Hollywood stars about something other than what they're doing on screen. So I talked to Russell Crowe, but I got a chance to really preview Cinderella Man. So he had done this one Gladiator movie, but Cinderella Man was coming out, and he was like, oh my God, I get to talk about this, And he's like, I would talk about this all day long. And he's somebody that's known to really shun the press, but great interviews because you have the opportunity to really talk about the thing that the person wants to talk about, and everybody loves sports. Everybody loves sports.
That's right. That's right. Now, I have to ask, what was one of your more memorable interviews you did, or more memorable people you talked to on air?
Yeah. Wow, that's a tough question, only in that the obvious answer would be, I'm sitting in the room getting ready for this interview with Denzel, and he walks in and puts his hands on my shoulder, and I'm like, oh, it's Denzel. And he couldn't have been more nice or more lovely. But I think the interviews that I did with people who were really facing insurmountable odds and figured out a way to make their dreams come true, those are the interviews that stuck with me. They really did.
Okay. All right. So, you know, you did, some work with, of course, NASCAR and a few other different places as well. I read
Mhm.
that you didn't really want to do track and field stuff, but you did like other stuff to kind of show what all you could do, and that you did it kind of purposely. What was the goal in kind of doing all that?
Absolutely. Well, the goal for me, I found that when I saw an athlete and they transitioned to broadcast, it was usually in their own sport and usually in an analyst position. So you're sitting there, and you have the person who's calling the play, and then you're giving the color. So that's the color analyst. And I said, look, I came from television since I said, so I wanted to be able to really do all that I was capable of doing. And not to say that, Grant Hill can't cover something other than the Final Four. He certainly can. But for me, it was really important that I take that bet that I bet on myself. And so for the first few years, I just said, look, unless it is an abject emergency, I don't want to cover track and field. I want to be the person who conquered other areas of sport before I made my way back. Because if I was able to do that, then when I got to track, I could host. or I could be your color analyst. So it gave me some choices. And I always knew that I wanted to really spread my wings outside of sports broadcasting and do some other things. I have a pretty robust background in entertainment. So to be able to build platforms that were consistent with the things that I was passionate about, that means so much to me. I think about the movement that I started when I turned 50 for women over 50, called Not Your Mama's 50. Not better, not worse, just different. We're the first generation of women who have had access to everything. We got a female vice president. We almost had a female president. We had an all female flyover crew for the Super Bowl. We had women go into space, all female crew. So anything that we've thought of, we've been able to do. And when I conceptualized it originally, I knew that I also wanted it to be a conversation vehicle so we could talk to some of these women and find out how they got to that thing, because it's never a straight line. And it's the zigzag that really makes a conversation interesting. And so, making the decision not to cover track first really was in support of the future I knew that I could accomplish.
Well, basically, you said all that to say that you were a boss, basically. But
You said that, not me.
but speaking of being a boss, you definitely started kind of your own media as well, and they know kind of you did. Okay, you started your own media, and basically, talking about elevating speaking skills and things like that of people as well. Was that kind of an idea that you already had from the beginning, or it kind of, your, I guess, media company kind of expanding into each and every avenue to kind of, capture on every single thing it could?
Yeah. Well, the name of the company is Maxie Media Group, and the tagline is Your Media Needs Under One Umbrella. I realized that you mentioned NASCAR. Well, in NASCAR, I did media training and marketing communications. With Formula One, I launched both of Red Bull's Formula One teams in Europe. I worked for the Orioles in marketing and PR, and I worked for Special Olympics. It all comes home
Mm-hmm.
in event management. And so being able to have that level of information and experience allows me to go through the ideation stage when I'm working with a client. And then once everything's in place, I can bring in a team to execute on my behalf. And so that's a lot of what we do on the media side. As it pertains to media training and broadcast training, what I realized was when I was reporting, I would sit down with an athlete or whomever I was speaking with and kind of engage them in conversation, especially if I wasn't familiar with their work, to know, do they know how to answer a question for a package? Do they know how to answer a question if it's a two-shot live interview? All of these things are important. And in that little bit of conversation, I would get to understand kind of where their experience level was. And then I would coach them to what they needed to do. So if somebody wasn't familiar with how a package is put together, I'd say, look, when we are talking, I want you to answer the question in a complete sentence, because when we cut the package, my question isn't going to be there, only your answer. Now, I'll introduce the piece and I may do a stand up, but this is about you. So we want you to answer in a complete sentence so that we're really focusing on you, your message, and what's important to you. So that little bit of coaching would help someone to be able to put their best foot forward. And when I was working at Cold Pizza, I had a gentleman who will remain nameless, but he was a Super Bowl champion. And he asked me, he said, look, I want to do what you're doing. He said, but I can't go to, a number 50 market and get my reps in. I'm a Super Bowl champion. I have to enter the space as a Super Bowl champion. How did you learn? And I said, well, I've been doing this since I was 9. I said, but what I can do is I can look at the different things that I do and kind of put an operational lens on it to say, what are the elements and how can I teach that to you? And so I took a step back. I said, okay, I sideline report. I work as a host. I work as a color analyst. I teleprompter read when I'm anchoring. All of these different things, there's a lot of different components that you're dealing with. And I basically put a curriculum point for point for point, and then we did role playing. I gave him homework assignments. He worked on it. We came back. We went through it. It was a long process, but that man is working in a number one market today, and he has been since a week after we worked together. That's
Wow.
when I knew I
Wow.
had something.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like it. I mean, I need to be taking notes and probably giving you a call. But but yeah, definitely, it's very amazing. It's very great to hear your story. Great to hear, of course, from track to now broadcasting and being a boss in the broadcasting lane as well. We can't call you just a broadcast veteran. We got to call you a boss in the broadcasting lane.
But you know what, though, Mike? Here's the thing. It's like when I retired from track, I took a step back and I said, what thing do I have that I can take forward to my life, not knowing exactly what it was going to be, but that would serve me with all the work that I've done in track and field? Because if everything that I did all those years is about 10 hurdles and 400 meters, then it was an epic fail. What I could take with me was excellence. Excellence is not an accident. It's not going to fall out of the sky and hit you in the head. Now, it's not perfectionism. Perfectionism is a trap, but excellence is a very good or outstanding outcome. Everybody's had that. Everybody's had that. And that's the message that I most like to share, is so that people understand I'm really no different than you. I may be a little bit taller, my legs may be a little bit longer, but I'm no different, because all of us have had a very good or outstanding outcome in our lives. The question is, how do we apply ourselves in such a way that we can replicate it over and over and over again throughout our lives? That's the piece.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I
Um,
speak about around the world.
yeah, you sound like you just gave a speech to have somebody run out the tunnel and they fired up. But let's see. But I do have one other question for you.
Sure.
You know, in Women's History Month, this is what I was asking pretty much every guest is what advice would you have for any like young journalist or broadcast person, especially a black journalist or a black broadcast person or a black woman that's trying to get in this field and trying to make their mark? What advice would you have for them?
Yeah. I think it would dovetail off of the excellence advice. You have the ability to fulfill your dreams. You really, really do. The question is, are you willing to put in the work? Diligent work, not necessarily hard work. The two are different. Diligent work is what I advocate. Are you willing to put in the work? Are you willing to be the person who can not only do the job, but they can stand you while you do the job? Okay? It doesn't matter how much of a genius you are, it doesn't matter how skilled you are. If people can't stand to be in your presence in order to get the work done, you will get that job one time. One time. Be excellent, be affable, be prepared. If you can be those three things, and then understanding that it's okay to fail, it is okay to fail. Failure is a big a part as being an Olympian as anything else. Because trust me, that 2/100ths of a second taught me a whole bunch in 1984, and I used it in 88. All right? Those four things can take you wherever you see yourself being.
Oh, amen. Amen. Oh, Brandon.
And the church said, Amen.
Yes. And the doors of the church are open. We're passing the collection plate. Okay.
That's
But
the plate, brother.
all right. But of course, we have reached the end of the show. Of course, the show is not over. We do have a game. I have 5 questions for you. Got 2 answers for you, and you got to make one choice. Are you ready?
Okay.
All right, we're gonna go on track. Jackie Joyner Kersey or Gail Davis.
Ooh. Oh man. Okay. I already beat Gail, so Jackie.
Okay. Oh, okay. All right.
Ugh.
Okay. Now I've got to go with two competitors in a different arena. Skip or Stephen A. Which one you say you like the most?
Stephen A.
Ah, okay.
Got him in my phone.
Okay. All right. Now I've got to ask. Of course, you grew up in the Bay Area. You went to college in LA. So the Bay Area or Southern California, which
Oh,
one do you
please.
enjoy more?
You know what? You can't see me. San Francisco, baby. Don't.
All right. All right. Okay. Now, which one do you enjoy more, speaking or coaching?
Ooh. I'd say speaking because you can coach while you speak too.
Ah, okay. All right. Now, I'm going to ask about some sports that you covered, or I believe, yeah, some sports that you covered. Boxing or tennis? Which one do you
Oh,
like covering more?
boxing.
Ah, did you envision? Did you
Lennox
envision?
Lewis, Mike Tyson.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. I was going to say, did you envision like some Apollo Creed and Rocky Balboa type stuff when you first went into boxing?
Right.
All right. Well, I want to thank you for your time. If you would hang around, of course, after the show, I got a few things to go over with you. But I want to thank you for coming on the show. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. If you can, Miss Leslie Maxie, can you please tell everyone where they can find you, where they can find whatever you're working on, where they can go get some coaching? Just let everyone know where they can find you.
Absolutely. So you can come to Maxie Media Group, MAXIE, mediagroup.com. All of our information's there. You can find me on social, Leslie Maxie or Not Your Mama's 50. And I love to connect with, the people in social media. It's so much fun. We didn't get to do that when I was young. So yeah, I really answer messages for real, for real.
Oh, okay. Well, you heard it here first, folks. All right. I just want to thank everyone again for tuning in. You've been listening and watching Touring the AFC South. Of course, you can find Touring the AFC South on Apple Podcasts. You can find it on Spotify, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music. Let's see. Am I running out of places? No, I'm not. But of course, you can find it on YouTube as well. Of course, you can find me on social media at Mike Patton 82. That's MikePaton 82 on Twitter and on Instagram. Yeah, Instagram. You can find me on there at THA, which is not the _general_MP. Thank you all again for tuning in to Touring the AFC South. I'm your host, Mike Patton. We're out.